In your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to our webinar this morning, this afternoon, I guess. But I guess if you're watching the recorded version of this, it could be morning, afternoon, or any time of day. So today's topic for our webinar, by this point, you should have already gotten everything set up with pulling out brand names and item numbers out of your listings that cut down on cross promotions. You've now learned about manual versus automated price tracking. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about bulk editing within the eBay system. We're going to touch on eBay limits and at what point you're going to be ready to move on to the next set of assignments. So in getting started here today, the first thing that we need to do is, of course, get into our eBay account. So we're going to get to eBay. We're going to log in. I'm going to show you some of the things you can do by way of bulk editing and just some kind of neat stuff that a lot of eBay sellers aren't aware of that they can do within eBay. So here we are on the eBay site. And if I just come in here to the My eBay section and I jump down here to selling, that's going to open up the eBay Seller Hub. Now, again, if you have not updated to eBay Seller Hub, you should have done this like 5 webinars ago. You can do that just by going to ebay.com/S as in Sierra, H as in Hub. That's what Seller Hub is. And what we're going to talk about first is we're going to talk about bulk editing. So first, the last time I recorded this lesson, eBay gave the ability to do like 3-day fixed price listings and 7-day fixed price listings. And since then, they've gone away from that. And now they only do good until canceled fixed price listings. So a lot of the type of editing that I covered the last time I recorded this lesson isn't necessary because we don't need to relist items. We certainly don't need to relist items in bulk. All we really need to do is change quantity. Now, what that means is anytime an item goes out of stock. So let's say that you're doing price tracking manually. You don't have the automated price tracker working for you. And again, that brings up a good point. If you do have the auto price tracking going, then you should be letting it do just about everything. You should, if let's say, for example, you feel like your prices are a little bit low, you should go into the tool in the automated price tracker and adjust your formula there so that it automatically updates all your items, right? If you try to come in here and change price on items when the auto lister is, or the price tracking tool is set to come in and change those prices, then you'll change a price on eBay and then the tool will come in and change it again. And so it becomes problematic because you're basically fighting with the tool. So remember, if you're going to do price changes, keep in mind that everything is formula based within that auto price tracker. And so you want to make sure that you're using that to do it. Now, if you're doing manual price tracking, meaning you're using the list function or the add to cart button or option within these retail sites, then yeah, you can edit prices just fine. But if you're using the auto price tracker, for heaven's sakes, use the auto price tracking functionality and don't do it yourself. So a couple of things I do want to show you. I want to show you how you can mark an item as out of stock. Again, this is something that's good for people that are not using the auto price tracking tool. The tool itself, once an item goes out of stock, should automatically mark those items as out of stock on eBay as well. So you shouldn't need to do this action manually. But I do want to show you how to do it manually for those that are doing it that way. So let's say that this basketball standard, let's say it went out of price or went out of stock at Walmart. Well, I could kill off the listing, end it, and then relist it again when the item comes back in stock. But what if it comes back into stock in a day? Right? You don't want to be ending listings and then relisting new ones. eBay is going to give a base account 50 free listings per month. And if you list an item and then you end it, and then you list it again, and then you end it, and then you do that another 10 times, well, congratulations, you've now eaten up 10 of your listings for the month, rather than just changing the stock quantity and not having it count more than just one limit. Or excuse me, not have it count for more than just one listing. So if I wanted to edit this, I could just come in here and click the edit option. And once we've got the edit option up here, then we just scroll down to the quantity box and we just change that to a 0. That's all we do. Now, I'm going to show you one other thing that we covered in one of the previous lessons that facilitate this and make this possible. But once we change the quantity to 0, what happens, this item becomes unavailable on the eBay marketplace. So if I click on it, and we go and visit this page, you'll notice that the add to cart button is now gone, right? Even if I open up an incognito mode window so that it doesn't show that I'm logged into the account. Let me get this over here. Here we go. Even if I do an incognito mode window with that same item, you'll see that the add to cart button is still gone because this item is out of stock. And then that way, when the item does come back in stock, you just set the quantity back to 1 again, and boom, it's live on eBay. Now that's, again, only important if you're doing manual price tracking. You shouldn't need to do that if the auto price tracking stuff is in place. So let's get this thing back online again. And I'm going to show you the other place where you can edit this quantity, because when you're using the Seller Hub interface, where you go to ebay.com/sh and it looks like this, you can also edit it from this page. So if I come here to where it says available quantity, I click on that little pencil, I change it to 1, I hit submit, boom, this item is now live on the eBay site again. So if I click on that title and visit the page again, the buy it now button and the add to cart button are now back in there. Now, for right now, we want to just continue to add items to your list, because if you're pulling out brand names and item numbers, you're using the auto price tracker, or you're doing manual price tracking, now we just want to get up to 50, and we really want to just focus on speed. The goal here is we want to get to a point where we can add an item to eBay every 2 to 3 minutes using this kind of a method. Now, a little bit later on in the process, I'm going to introduce you to an auto lister, which is going to help to speed up the process even more. But for right now, I want you to focus on the basic mechanics for just zooming through these listings. And in the next set of assignments, we're going to get into more analytical approaches for identifying which items we're selecting. So we're no longer going to just grab items at random, but I do want you to just continue to grab items at random until you've got about 50 items on eBay. Now, there's a difference between 50 items on eBay and 50 items that you've listed. And what I mean by that is that eBay is going to limit you to listing no more than about 50 items before they start charging you a fee. Now, as of the time of this recording, that fee is generally around 35 cents per listing. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that as soon as you get north of 50, you see that every time you list a new item, you're getting hit with the 35-cent fee, 35-cent fee. And eventually that extra fee kind of demoralizes you. That's why I want you to stop after you hit 50, so that way I can show you how we can get more items listed for free, so that we're not paying 35 cents a pop, because that really does add up. I mean, imagine listing 1,000 items at 35 cents a piece. You're now spending hundreds of dollars in eBay fees. And sure, the amount of sales you get may well be able to offset that, but just seeing that 35-cent fee every single time is like death by 1,000 needles. And so that's what we want to avoid. So make sure that you stop once you get to 50. Now, the way that you'll know that you're at 50 is because when you're listing an item, anytime you list an item, you'll see something like this. So rather than listing new item, I'll just hit the edit option so that I can show you what I'm talking about here. When you get down to the very bottom of the listing form, it'll tell you what the fees are. And the moment you see that when you list an item, this says 35 cents, then you know that you're past your 50 and you're ready for what's next. Now, there is also a chance that maybe you came in here and you selected a subtitle, or you chose some other option, which ended up being some kind of a fee, because eBay has little like nickel and dime fees that they charge you for various different options. And so, but if it does say 30 or 35 cents, that usually means that you're north of your 50 for the month. Now, there are 2 types of eBay limits that we need to discuss. So if you come back to the Seller Hub overview page, I'm going to show you an option that usually isn't visible by default, and that is the monthly limits. Now, we've covered this in a previous lesson, but I think now we're to a point where you're going to get up to 50. This is where your actual limits may come into play and start to cause some potential problems. So I want to show you how to see what your limits are on your eBay account and how those differ from just regular the 50 free listings you get per month. So once you are on Seller Hub and you're on the overview page, you just come over here to the right-hand side, and there's going to be a little customize link. When you click on this, you want to make sure the box is checked that says monthly limits. Now, as soon as you check that box, it's going to add a monthly limits box to the bottom of this list, and it's going to automatically scroll us down to that section so we can see it. So let's go ahead and tick it. So there it went. It just scrolled down and it just tacked the monthly limits right there on the end of it. And then once we are done adding that box to the page, and by the way, we can also reorder those so that if you wanted this closer to the top of the page, you could just drag it right on up. Now, it's a little bit finicky, so you might have to let go, maybe scroll up and then drag again until you get it to the top. But you can really reorganize these boxes in any way that you see fit. And so if you want to see limits at the top, great. If you don't, that's fine too. that's not going to be a problem. But as soon as you are done, you just hit the I'm done button and it will stay there. Now, here's what our limits are. So the limits on my account right now is that I can list a total of 30 items per month. Now, that's a hard limit. And what I mean by that is that if I try to list a 31st item, eBay is going to stop me and say, sorry, you've hit your limits. You can't list any more items, right? And the dollar amount limit is the same way, where if I list $2,999 worth of stuff and then I try to list another item, even if it's for $2, even if that limit would just put me $1 over my limit, then at that point, eBay would stop me and say, hey, you can't list this item, because that would mean you would supersede your limit. Now, the temptation is that when you see that you're at your limits, is to come in here and click this link to request to list more. The only problem with this is that this is an algorithmically driven formula for raising your limits, and it is notoriously conservative. And what that means is that you'll click that button and they might give you a limit raise, but they might only increase you $1,000, or they might only allow you to list 10 more items. But what really eBay can do is that eBay, it has it within their power where they can up to double your limits, and sometimes even beyond that every 30 days, which means that if I contact eBay using the methodology that I'll give you once you get to that point, you contact eBay and you say, hey, I want to get my limits raised. They could turn my limits on this account from my total of $3,000. They could take it all the way up to $6,000. If I use this little link right here to request the limit increase, then it's probably only going to bump me to maybe $3,000 or $4,000. And since your limits are based on your previous month's limits, that means that the more we get out of each month, the more we're going to get out of next month and the month after that. Case in point, so let's imagine that I contact eBay following my protocol. And by the way, right at the bottom of this lesson that you're watching right now, there's going to be a description of the contents of this webinar. I'm going to be sure to include a link to a page in the eMentor tool site, which is going to talk about getting your eBay limits raised. So now it's important that you don't try to get your eBay limits raised until you're at your eBay limits. Because if you contact eBay and say, hey, I want to list more stuff, but they see that you still have $2,265 more worth of stuff you can list, or they see that you can list another 25 items, they'll just say, contact us back when you actually are close to your limits. Or they may say, all right, we'll raise your limits, and then they'll raise your limits only marginally. They might raise it by an extra $500, which really doesn't get us going. And so that's what we want to make sure that we're avoiding. So again, down at the bottom of the description of this lesson, there's going to be a link to a page that's going to talk about how to get your limits raised, but don't do anything with that link or that page until you know that you're at your limits. Now, another thing that's important is you want to try to get to both of your limits at the same time if possible. Now, if you've got a limit where eBay is saying that you can list $25,000 worth of stuff and you can list 1,000 items, you do some back of the napkin math and you realize that you're going to hit your item limit way soon, or your dollar amount limit way sooner than you're going to hit your item limit. In fact, you could probably list 4,000 items, or excuse me, you could probably list 4 times the amount of items on eBay. And how should I say this? I'm not saying this right. You could potentially get your item limit raised on eBay and never have to worry about the dollar limit, or vice versa, depending on those numbers. So the reason I choose a $25,000 limit as a number is because that's one that's pretty common for students. I mean, sometimes students will come to me and they'll say, hey, I got my account created following what you taught, and I've got a limit of $100,000. I've had some students come back with 50,000, 25,000, 5,000, 10,000, 2,000, 1,000. But I would say the most common for somebody that has decent credit is usually around $25,000 worth of stuff. So if you divide 25,000, and by the way, the $25,000 limit usually comes paired with 1,000 limits or 1,000 items. That would mean that your average price per item would be 25 bucks. So that means that if you listed a whole bunch of items for $100, then you're going to hit the $25,000 well before that. Now, if you've been watching my trainings, you know that I don't like my students to focus on the really low-end items because they have a shipping fee that's associated with them, which can make it hard for you to remember, oh shoot, did I cover all my expenses on this transaction, or am I going to end up taking a bath because I forgot to account for that $8 shipping fee? And so you're probably never going to hit a $25 average price point. You're probably going to hit like somewhere between a $50 and $150 average price point, which means you're going to hit that 25,000 limit. If you're saying that you're averaging $150, you're going to hit it around the time you hit 166 items on eBay. right? And so eBay is going to stop you on whichever limit you hit first. So if you do have a $25,000 limit and 1,000 items, you've got tons of wiggle room on your 1,000 items. So we don't need to worry about getting that limit raised. If we can get eBay to double our limit from 25,000 to 50,000, then that's going to be all we need, because we're still going to have something like 800 listings left over to fill it in with another $25,000 worth of stuff. So anyway, I hope that makes sense. Now, that's the monthly limits, right? Monthly limits are hard limits. They're not going to allow you to list any more beyond that. But there's another type of limit that eBay gives you, and that's a free listing limit, right? This is what I was talking about before. Every single account on eBay gets 50 free listings per month. And usually if you find the promotional offers box, it'll say list 50 of your items for free, make money today, and it runs from November 1 to December 1. And then it will tell you how many of those listings you've used for the month. So right now it's saying that I've used 3 out of my 47 listings. Now this counts items that are listed, ended, and relisted. And so you want to make sure that you're using your 50 free each month judiciously, which is why you want to set your stock to 0 on items rather than ending the item and then relisting them. So this one is not a hard limit, meaning that once you get north of 50 listings, so if I didn't have this 30 item limit on my account, then I would be able to continue to list until I hit 50 items. And then after 50, they're not going to stop me. That's when they're going to start charging me 35 cents per listing. And that's the kind of soft limit that we're talking about here. So remember, the 50 per month soft limit, you just get charged 35 cents a pop after that. And the hard limit is your monthly limits right here. And if you want to get those limits raised, once you hit them, look at the bottom of this email in the description, and I'll have a link to a page on the eMentor tool site that will give you instructions on how to get those limits raised. Now, in addition to that, you can also email your coach and say, hey, coach, I hit my limits. How do I get these things bumped? And then we'll give you the special instructions for how to communicate with eBay in order to get those limits raised to the maximum amount. Now, we've talked a little bit about editing those quantities and changing it to 0. But by default, your eBay account does not allow you to set a quantity on an item to 0. If an item goes to 0, then it will go out of stock, it will go into your unsold section, and it won't stay in your active listings. So there's a setting that you need to change. Now, we covered this setting in the lesson on avoiding scammers in the second set of eBay assignments, but I'm going to show it to you again just in case you missed it. So if you come in here to your selling tools, or actually, no, it's not the selling tools box, it's the shortcuts box. Where's the shortcuts box? Okay, here's my shortcuts box. And again, remember, these boxes can be moved around. And so it may not appear here, but it will be called shortcuts. The fourth option down, and it's been the fourth option down in this menu for years now, is site preferences. And if you click on site preferences, it's going to kick you over to the site preferences version of the page. And you need to make sure that this box right here, use the out of stock option, is checked. So this is important because when the quantity of your good until canceled item reaches 0, the listing remains active, so it stays in your active section of eBay, but it's hidden from search, and the add to cart button goes away so that nobody can buy it until you change the quantity back up to 1. Now, this is extremely important for the auto price tracking to work correctly, because it's going to mark items as in stock and out of stock. So if you don't have this box checked, it's going to break your eBay account. So you'd want to make sure that was checked. And again, we've already covered this, so your account should already be that way. But if it's not, then just make sure you tick that box and you hit apply. Okay, so now that we've covered that, let's talk a little bit about bulk editing on your listings. So we've talked about eBay limits. We've talked about the difference between your 50 free listings you're going to get each month and the actual item, the hard item limits that we're talking about. And again, don't try to get your limits raised until you're at least one of your limits, if not both of them. On my account, where my limits are for this one, they already bumped my limits when I got a sell that came through the other day. And so they bumped it at that point from 10 items and $1,000 to 20 to 30 items. So they tripled it and 3,000. But if I had contacted eBay over the phone, I probably could have gotten it raised even more than that. But for right now, I'm nowhere near my limits. So I'm not going to make a call like that. And then every 30 days, you can get those limits raised again. And actually, in truth, multiple times per month. Now, when you call eBay and you say, hey, I want to get my limits raised, if you've already gotten your limits raised for the month, oftentimes eBay will say, no, we can't do that, but they can. And they have done this time and time again for our students. You just have to be persistent. You say something like, hey, can you roll back my other limit and then just do a bigger one instead? And they can accommodate you if they want to, and if you get the right person on the phone who's not having too terrible of a day. So All right, let's go back to our listings. So if you go to the unsold section, items will show up in this unsold section if they haven't been relisted. And so I was doing a lesson on an item that sold for me, and so that's why this one is in the unsold section. But if you've got that option ticked, then usually items are not going to show up in here. Now, if they do, then you can come back and you can just edit those listings. You can relist them. You can come back and set the quantity at 1 again. But if you've already got the equivalent listing in here, so if I go here to active, you'll see this item in here. So the way that it was before is that I had this item listed 2 times just because of the way that I was doing it. This is actually an item that sold for me recently. I did a webinar on how to do the order fulfillment using this product. And then when I relisted it, after an item sells, you want to relist the item as a quantity of 2, because once an item sells once, it's more likely to sell a second and a third and a fourth time. And the reason for this is because after an item sells and you have that quantity option selected, it's going to show something like this, where it's going to say 2 available, 1 sold. So the 2 available gives a little bit of urgency. And so people that see this 1 sold will say, oh, it sold once at this price, so it's probably going to sell again. So quantities are limited. And this becomes especially true once this number goes into the dozens or into the hundreds, because again, this is going to, as long as you have this item on your eBay account as inventory, even if you have the inventory marked at 0, it's still going to stay active, and that number is going to continue to climb every time this item continues to sell. And then I'm just going to come back in and edit the quantity back up to 2 to ensure that I always have at least 1 in stock. Now, if this thing was selling really crazily, I might set the quantity at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, just whatever's going to keep it in stock all the time, so I never have to worry about it selling out. Now, I don't want to do this on every single item. I only want to do this on items that have actually sold, because this number counts against my monthly selling limits. So eBay says that I can only list $3,000 worth of stuff. So because I have a quantity of 2 available, this item is not taking up $80 of my eBay account. Instead, it's taking up $160. And so if I had this listed at a quantity of 10, then this one item is going to eat up about $800 of my account. And I don't love that idea. I would rather have many, many different lines in the water than having a quantity of 10 on something that doesn't need a quantity of 10. And since you can come back and edit the quantity at any point, there's no real compelling reason to keep a high quantity on all of your items. It's really just not necessary. So anyway, that's why items that sell once are likely to sell again and again. Plus, if one person bought it, then chances are there's another person who's willing to pay for it at that price point. So now that we've talked about all this, let's go ahead and show you how to do some of that bulk editing. So let's say that I wanted to add a shipping disclaimer on my items. Maybe I wanted to say something like, hey, all of our items are going to ship within 72 hours. We work with a variety of different warehouses, and so we'll try to upload tracking time where needed. As you start to look through other eBay sellers' listings, you're going to start to see things that they repeat on every one of their listing pages. And if you find something that you really want to have be on every single one of your listings, you've got 2 options. You can either go through and edit each one of your 50 items one at a time, or you can use the bulk edit feature to add those items en masse. So what I'm about to show you, some of the bulk editing options that we're going to employ may not be as useful if you're using the auto price tracker, because again, the auto price tracker kind of overlaps with some of this functionality, case in point being the price tracking and marking items as back in stock. But the price tracking tool doesn't do anything towards what is the content of your description. So to use the bulk edit function, all you're going to do is you're going to check the box and select any of the items that you wanted. So you could tick them all one at a time, and you could say, hey, I only want to edit these 3, or if you tick the box at the very top, it's going to auto-select all of them. And again, 4 items, this isn't a big deal. I could go through and edit 4 items in no time, but going through and editing 50 items or 500 items or 5,000 items starts to become pretty unrealistic pretty quickly, and that's where this bulk edit feature really becomes beneficial. So if we come here to edit, and then we click edit all 4 listings, then what it's going to do is it's going to take us into the bulk edit page. It's going to load them up, and then it's going to give us areas where we can edit each of these items. So we can edit the photos, we can edit the titles from this page. There's a little panel that you can slide back and forth. So this is kind of a preview of whatever listing is selected. So there's a title, subtitle. So you probably recognize what's here in this panel, because it's a modified version of what shows up on just the regular create listing page. If you click maximize, you can get a full version of this page. And if you hit minimize, it's going to tuck that away and give us all this on the left-hand side. And now this is where we can start to edit a few things. So let's say that we wanted to, let's say that you're doing manual price tracking, right? You're not using the auto lister, you're just doing manual price tracking, but you decide that you're a little low on your prices. What you can do is all of these items are going to be priced dramatically differently because they're dramatically different products. I mean, I'm not going to expect somebody to pay the same amount for a basketball hoop as they would for a food processor or a jump starter or a couch, right? And so, but if you wanted to do a percentage-based price increase, you select all these boxes down the left-hand side, you hit edit price, and then from now you can select what kind of a pricing rule you want to apply. So if we do buy it now price, we can say change to increase by or decrease. Now, if you do change to, and you set this at like 10, this would completely destroy you because it would change all of your items prices to just a flat $10. Well, if you're trying to sell a blender for $10 or a couch for $10, a lot of people will want to jump on that very, very quickly. And so you've got to be careful with these bulk edits, because with bulk editing comes the power to make a lot of changes very efficiently, but it means that your mistakes are magnified. If you make a mistake here and you edit the price and you set it as $10 and you do that on 300 items, you better pick up on that pretty quickly. Otherwise, you're going to sell a whole bunch of units really quickly that you can't fulfill on, and you can either file bankruptcy or you can cancel orders and end up getting your eBay account dinged. Now, I think we could survive even if that happened, but you definitely want to be careful with this and just make sure you're doing what you want. So instead of doing the change to option, you usually want to select the increase by or decrease by option. Now notice there are 3 different types. There's buy it now, best offer, and then you can change your quantity in this too. But it's pretty easy to just change quantity on the fly, and especially if you're using the auto pricer, that's going to set items as back in stock automatically anyway. But if you wanted to do, let's say, a 3% increase in price, you would just put 3 in this box, and then on amount, you're going to change that to percent, right? Because if you do amount, then what it's going to do is it's going to tack on an extra $3 instead of an extra 3%. And then from there, if you do the percent, there are going to be items that are on the high end of that spectrum. So on a $500 item, a 3% increase means that you're going to increase the price by about $45. On a $100 item, that's only a that's only a $3 price increase. I think I did the math right there. So that's what we want to make sure that we're being careful of. So if you wanted to, you could say, hey, you know, I wanted to do a 3% price increase, but I don't want the price increase to go above a total of $10. Then at that point, it's only going to increase the price on these items until it hits that ceiling, and then it's going to stop. But if you are confident and you just want to do the 3% price increase across the board, let's just change this to a 1% price increase to demonstrate this. So let me close this. I'll show you what my prices are right now, and you'll see this. So $279, $79, $139, and $154. So I'm going to go edit. I'm going to go edit price, increase by 1%, and then I'll leave this box blank, and then I'll hit save and close, and then it's going to update those 4 listings. It's going to take a second, and then boom, you see that there was a 3% price increase on all those items. So really easy way to be able to edit your prices. Now, we can also edit our categories this way. That's what this edit fields option is. We can also use this to review things or remove listings or whatever. But let's say that we wanted to add a little bit to our description, or we wanted to change our item locations in bulk to location varies. So instead of specifying, maybe you accidentally set up all 50 of your first listings as being from Indiana. And now you got a whole bunch of customers in Indiana saying, hey, why is this taking so long to ship to me? I just ordered it and you're only a city away from me. It should have been here by now. But in reality, it's shipping from Southern California because that's where the Walmart warehouse is. And now you've got an upset customer. So you want to set it to location varies so that a customer doesn't get specific shipping time estimates from the eBay side of things, right? All of these things that we could edit and change. But let's go ahead and edit the description. So I'm going to select item description. And then from there, we get 3 options in this drop-down box at the top. We can edit listings individually. So that means it's just going to give us a bunch of fields that we can just copy and paste what information we want in there. Or we can do a find and replace. So if we knew that all of our descriptions had a section called shipping details, we could do a find and replace shipping details with the new value of what the new shipping is going to be. And this is useful if you have the exact same text already applied to a lot of your listings at once. So let's say that you had the exact same snippet of 3 sentences about shipping, and you wanted to just edit a little bit of that, right? You could do the find and replace, put that text in there that you want it to replace those 2 to 3 sentences, and then maybe your new snippet is going to be 4 sentences, and you would write that out, and it would find it on the page, delete it out, and pop in the new text. Or an easier solution is that it can just add the items to the bottom of the description. So if we select that one, then whatever we put in here is going to show up on all of it. So let's say that we want to say we strive, and by the way, this is just a generic message. I'm just demonstrating the process. I'm not telling you that you need to put this text in all of your listings. Every single one of you that's attending this lesson may want to apply this principle in different ways, depending on what you're trying to do. So regardless of where you're at, I'm just showing you how to add it. I'm not trying to tell you that you should add this text to your listing. So if you want to get ideas, then what you could do is you could go and look at other people's listings and see if they have the same text copied and pasted across all of their descriptions, like disclaimers or shipping policies or privacy policies or return policies or whatever else, anything you could potentially imagine, but you'll get a better idea of what you might want to add after looking at that. So we strive to ship all items within 3 business days, but sometimes due to shipping or due to situations beyond our control, we are unable to. If this happens, we will communicate. All right, I'm not liking what this says. Let's just show you. So free shipping on all orders. So we're just going to add this to every single one of our listings. We'll throw in a nice exclamation mark. We can, of course, change the color, change everything about it if we so desire. So let's change this to red. Let's change our font size to 24. We'll make this nice and big. We'll highlight it, change it to 24, change our font, center it, whatever. And then from there, we can hit save and close. Now it's going to update all of our listings, and it's going to pop this text at the bottom of every single one of our descriptions. Okay, so we've gone ahead and done that. Now we just need to hit submit changes, and then it's going to give us our fees. Now we didn't create any new listings. We didn't do anything that would impact the fee structure. So it says $0.00. And so now I'm going to hit confirm, and then it's going to make those updates, and it's going to throw that on to each one of those. Now, you can do automation rules, but because we're doing good until canceled listings, there's not really a need to do that. So don't worry about automation rules. Plus, if you're using the auto lister, that kind of negates any of the automation rules that you'd be using at scale. So now let's go ahead and view our active listings so that we can see our handiwork. So I went into the active section, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on each one of these and click view active listing. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, I'll just click on it like that. And then you'll see free shipping on all orders, right? So we've just added that text to this listing. Close out that window. Then I'll click on this one. Boom, there it is on that one too. And we could check the other two, but they're going to be on there. So anyway, start playing around with the bulk editing. Play with it on a small scale, like maybe take one dummy listing and then just tick that one item and then just see what the different edit options will do. And so let's go ahead and edit this one. Let's pretend like this was our dummy listing, but you might just create one just to demonstrate the process. Oh, you know what? Maybe I need to select, let's try this again. Okay, I guess we're going to have to, because if I hit edit selected, it's just going to bring me to the flat edit page for one item. So I guess we need to select 2 or more. As I'm sure you'd imagine, most people don't bulk edit a single item because that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But if you choose 2 or more, it's going to give you this listing template like we gave before, where we can then edit it. And then we get all these different fields where we can change our conditions, our custom labels, our prices, our quantities, return policy. People use these in so many different ways. It's kind of cool what you can do with it. And so, yeah, that's how you use the bulk editing tool. So now that you've watched this training, go ahead and list items until you either hit 50 items and then stop and then contact me if I'm your coach. If your coach has told you to list until you hit 176, then do what your coach said. But for me and my students, get to 50, and then the moment it tries to charge you 35 cents for a listing, that's when you stop and you email me, and that's when you're ready for the next set of assignments, where we're going to start talking about reputation management, how to come across as credible, and how to get more free listings without getting charged 35 cents a pop. The death by 1,000 needles. In addition to that, remember the difference between the types of limits. Every account on eBay gets 50 free listings per month, but if you have a hard limit of 30 items per month and $3,000, eBay is going to cap you as soon as you hit that limit. So it's entirely possible that you may hit your limits and not be able to list any more items, and therefore not get to your 50 until you followed the training in the description at the bottom of this video that talk about how to get your limits raised. And so if that's the case, that's fine. It's just going to kind of alter what order you have to do things in. And so, yeah, just get in there and start listing items and really just focus on speed. Again, I think the best approach is you set a timer for yourself, you list an item, and then it's just a race against the clock. You're always looking for inefficiencies. You're always looking for opportunities to cut out unnecessary parts of the equation. And above all, try to remember not to make this more complicated than it needs to be. In the next set of assignments, I'm going to get into a far more analytical process for how to identify which items to list. So at this point, please don't just make up new criteria for selecting your items, because it's not going to be beneficial. Just focus on speed, getting those items out there as quickly as humanly possible, and applying what I'm teaching you here in this training, along with the previous 2 trainings, and pulling out brand names and item numbers and using that auto lister if you have signed up for that, and then we can take it from there. So thanks everybody for attending. We hope that the webinar has been useful. Again, look at the description. If you're at your limits and you're ready to get them raised, don't look at that page until you're actually at your limits. So thanks everybody for attending, and we look forward to having you on board for our next webinar.